Hello everyone, I'm back to do my presentation on easements for the California bar exam. This is just a portion of a real property essay that you may get. I just recently did a covenants one and I was trying to type it up as I did it, made a lot of mistakes. So here I actually put it on a little format for you guys. Basically it's how to write up an easement if you get one on the bar exam, and usually you write up the real covenant and easement together. And let's go over easement. So here's the rule. The right to use the land of another. That's the basic rule we have here for that. The right to use the land of another. So that's the rule you would use if you're starting to make your easement, your actual easement paragraph for your bar essay. And then we go to easements can be. So there's lots of, they can be affirmative or negative. Affirmative means to do something. To do something. Let me get my tool out here to write. I'm trying to hurry. There we go. So affirmative means to do something. Negative means not to do something. So just quickly run through what is it, a negative easement or affirmative easement. And there's two types of easement. There's a pertinent easement and easement in gross. Appurtenant easements are tied to the land. That means it runs with the land and the successors. Now, an easement in gross is just to one individual. It is not tied to a particular piece of land, so it runs with the person only. So appurtenant runs with the land and successors, lots of people. Easement in gross, the individual only. So it runs with the person only. Okay, and we'll talk about that when we talk about easement transfers and all of that. So affirmative or negative, is it appurtenant or easement in gross? Next, you'll have to do a creation of the easement. Was it expressly created, an implication easement, estoppel, or necessity? Now, express is in writing. You usually see these. I usually see these on my essay as well as my real property MBE. So express means it's in writing. It grants the right to use the land, but reserves the right to use to for the grantor. So the grantor grants the right to use the land to someone else, but he reserves the right to himself to use that piece of land too. That's an express writing easement. Implication means there used to be a prior use. They've used it before. Prescription, of course, is HOAC, which is hostile, open, and notorious, and continuous. And that's the prescription easement. And we also learned that for adverse possession, okay? Then we have estoppel. So another creation, it could be through estoppel. And estoppel can occur where the servient parcel allows use of the property such that it is reasonable that the user will be substantially change his position. So basically reliance on belief that the permission will not be revoked. So basically it's reliance that it will not be revoked. So that can be an easement by estoppel. Easement by necessity, strictly necessary. There's no way out. Those are usually on MBEs, no way out. Can't get out to the, or you can't go out to the main highway, things like that. So the next thing you would write up is the scope of the easement. Okay, scopes of the easement means how far is the easement going to go. So the scope, what's included in it? There's present and future needs. Now present and future needs basically means that the courts will assume the easement intends to meet both the present and future needs of the dominant parcel due to normal foreseeable development. For an example of that would be an easement may be widened to accommodate wider cars. So we know the courts look at a present and future needs of the easement. What are the present needs and the future needs? Maybe the easement was for a parking structure, and further on they started to get more cars or more business. So a future need of that easement would be to expand that parking garage. Okay, an excessive use. Now, an excessive use is increased use that unreasonably interferes with the use of the servient estate is not permitted. So if it's excessive use, usually that is not permitted, and usually the remedy for that is an injunction or damages. So I know excessive use comes a lot on MBE, so you need to know that. So first we do our rule, then we tell what type of easement it can be, affirmative, negative, and we tell the reader, is it appurtenant or easement in gross? Then the creation, how is it created? And then we do our scope of the easement. Was it excessive use? Was it on target? Was it present or future needs that they needed to add to it? And then we go on to maintenance and repair. I've seen a lot of MBs on maintenance and repair of the easement. Now, the servient owner is not required to repair and maintain, but the dominant implied right to repair and maintain. So I remember there was one where somebody actually gave an easement to I guess, an electrical company, and they had put in some tunnels or wires or something underground. And basically the tunnel company was going to go back in and fix what was wrong. And the new owner was like, you can't come back in and repair this and so forth. But it is that the implied right that the repair and maintenance go to the dominant owner, to the dominant person. Okay, guys? And both the states, so let's say both the states are making use of the easement, and the court will proportion maintenance or repair costs based on their use. So maintenance and repair I saw a lot on MBE. So you have to know the rules on those. So review again, easement, we do our rule. We tell them what the easement is, how it was created, and a scope, and the scope of the easement, okay? And then we're going to move on to maintenance and repair. If there's any questions like that, you can add that in there if you need to. Now, transfer is important. A transfer and easement, the servient estate transfer, which is the burdened estate, runs with the land. So it transfers to the new owner, except if the purchaser is a BFP and took without notice. And of course, notice is the actual, constructive, or inquiry notice. So it usually runs with the land. It transfers to the new owner, and everything is fine, except if that purchaser is a BFP and took without notice. Okay? Now, dominant estate transfer depends if it runs with the land. So first you have to know, is it appurtenant or is it in gross? And if it's appurtenant, it normally runs or passes automatically. If it's in gross in common law, not transferable. In modernly, commercial, they say commercial land, commercial land is usually transferable, is what they say there. Okay? Commercial easements are usually transferable there. So in gross, common law says not transferable. Modernly, commercial easements are transferable. And if it's an appurtenant easement, normally runs and passes automatically. And that's if it's a dominant estate transfer. If it's a servient or burdened transfer, usually runs with the land. Transfer is okay, except if the purchaser is a BFP and took with no notice. Okay? And the last thing is the termination of the easement. My mnemonic is end cramp. These are the ways you can terminate an easement: estoppel, necessity, destruction, condemnation, release in writing, abandonment, merger, and prescription. And these are similar to our real covenant. Let me see here, real covenant, or is it equitable servitude? These are similar to our real covenant terminations also. So estoppel, of course, is detrimental, is reliance again, reasonable reliance. Necessity, easement by necessity ends when the necessity ends. So that's what happens here. It will end when the necessity ends. Destruction of, let's see, of the servient land, so long as it is not willful destruction by the owner. Condemnation by eminent domain, it's condemned. A release in writing by the easement holder to the servient owner. So the person who holds their easement has to put it in writing. They're releasing the servient owner from the easement, okay? Abandonment, it has to be an actual act to show abandonment, not just an assumption. Merger, the easement is extinguished when title to both the dominant and servient parcels become vested in the same person. So dominant and servient titles become vested in the same person. That means that it's a merger doctrine, and that's going to end the termination of the easement. Prescription, an easement can be terminated by employing the principles of prescription where there is an adverse continuous interruption of the easement for the statutory period. It's kind of like the adverse possession there. So the approach here is we are going to, first of all, write our rule. Let me get back to our rule. You know what, let me do an approach thing here for you guys real quick so we can just. Okay, the approach. This is the essay approach for it, okay? I know I'm back to my typing. Hopefully I don't mess it up this time. Approach. So we're going to identify the type. Well, I like to do the rule first. Rule, of course. Then you're going to ID the type of easement. What type of easement is it? Affirmative or negative? Appurtenant or in gross? Creation. How was it created? And then we're going to discuss any of the issues if they are raised by the facts. So the scope, if raised by the facts, we'll put a question mark. Repair or transfer, if raised by the facts. Transfer of the easement, if raised by the facts. And termination, if raised by the facts. So the ones with question marks, we raise them if they're raised by the facts. start with the rule, ID the type of easement, how was the easement created, and if these are raised by the facts, the scope of the easement, repair or maintenance of the easement, transfer of the easement, and termination of the easement. So basically that's your approach, and here's our rule, and I give you all of the easements can be, creation, scope, maintenance, repair, transfer if facts bring it up, and termination if facts bring it up. And finally, this is our approach for the easement essay. Not really essay, but easement portion of the essay, because you'll probably get more than just the easement there. So that is my conclusion here. And if you need to, I also have it on, I know that usually when we write up this, we're going to do easements, and good to know the real covenants and equitable servitude. So I'll do equitable servitudes in my next video. So far I've had real covenants done with an approach, and then I have your easements done with an approach. And now I'm going to move on to equitable servitudes with an approach, okay? So thank you, and have a nice day.